but anyhow, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Pastor Terry Parks, and I've been part of the church here for 7.5 years, and it's hard to believe. We live in Owego, but I helped with the church plant in Wysox, and then the one up in Auburn, and then some with the one in Florida as well. And then recently I've been doing a lot of ministry out in Canton, Pennsylvania, where a church out there, the pastor has had some health issues, and he's starting to come out of that now. Pastor Dave is out there this morning ministering. But I was down in Wysox when Pastor Mark and Eve were down there last week. She did a phenomenal job. She always does. And but anyhow, our friends in Panama City, again, we thank you and we bless you, and our friends as well in Wysox and Auburn who will be watching later on probably. But anyhow, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a retired soldier, but I'm also retired from the U.S. Treasury Department. And I retired early in October of 2019 to do full-time ministry and to help with Chris and the staff and with the church plants and everything. And so that was exciting to me, and I had been involved in full-time ministry previous to that. And then we had a little bit of a wrinkle in the plan. We had a relative who had Shane, and she had had a long-standing drug addiction. And so we decided to go down and just go see the baby, go with my sister down to see the baby, and had no intentions of adopting a baby. And I was really excited about my newfound lease on life. And some could say that I'm 59 now, as a 59-year-old man, I guess your plan got messed up. No. I would say God had a bigger plan. Yeah, he did. That's right. Come on. Because he was born with purpose. Amen. He is a carrier of the image of God. And there are babies born every day that the mothers are just walking off and leaving them in the labor and delivery room because they think that they can't do it, or they have a drug issue and so on. And so I never imagined being in the place that I'm in right now, where I am, but I would never, ever in a million years change a thing about where I am. And, I get to have a lot of time with him. And he has made me a better man because he opened up my understanding of how the Father views you. He's been a catalyst for me understanding in such a different and new way the Father's profound, obscene, scandalous love for every person. It's true. It's crazy. Crazy. Shane says, uh-oh. It is crazy. And we're all the time just pressing into the kingdom and seeking the Lord's face, and Shane has opened up my understanding on how the Father views us in so many different ways, and there's nothing he could do to make me love him more. And anything he does that's an inconvenience is never an inconvenience when you're doing it out of love. Because love operates out of inspiration, law operates out of obligation. So when he wakes up at 2 a.m. and he's crying because he wants some milk, I could grump and gripe and act like it's an inconvenience. But you know what? I never do. Why? Because he's opened up my perception and understanding, and love doesn't feel that way. It's just so different. And that's not to say that I don't ever get inconvenienced or that it's never painful. It is. Love will make you do stuff that you would never do otherwise. It's true. Love looks very different than law. Amen? And so love looks way different than obligations and doing things out of routine. And so love will be inconvenienced. Yep. Love will travel great distances. When I was dating Lori and we were talking about getting married, I would think nothing of jumping in the car, driving 8 hours from Roanoke, Virginia to Owego to spend a weekend with her. and then sometimes leave in the evening, arrive back down there just in time for work, and work the next day without any sleep. And you know what? It was never an inconvenience.
So true.
Amen?
Yeah.
And so there's nothing with Shane, even though he was not born of my blood or born with my name, I could never feel any different about him than if he was.
No, it's true.
And I love him just the same, and there's nothing he could do to make me stop loving him. As a matter of fact, about a month or two ago, Lori and I were talking about him, and you know, as an older parent, you see things, you notice things that you don't normally notice, and so we've just enjoyed so much, all of his little milestones, and we were talking and laughing about some of these things, and I said, he's just so perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I said that, up within me leapt, that's how the Father sees you.
Yes.
That's how the Father sees you.
So good.
Does that mean his conduct is always perfect? No. He's 2.5 years old. He's discovered he has a will. But he's so perfect, and it's the way I see him. It's not that his conduct is always perfect, but it's just the way the Father's heart has melted my heart and conformed me to see him the way I believe he sees you and I. And it's absolutely transformative, and it's just totally flipped my lid. And so I want to talk a little bit about that this morning, because I think that we have a very shallow understanding of how the Father views us and how he loves us and what that actually looks like and how it feels and how it can change our heart so that we can see people the way he sees them. All right? Aren't you glad he sees us not based on our faults and flaws, but based on our potential and our created identity? You know, he's called us all not to just be observers of the divine nature, but to be partakers of it.
Yeah.
He's called every one of you to be a partaker in his divine nature.
Yes.
And to be a carrier and a bearer of his image. And that wherever you go, whatever you touch, whoever you speak to, whatever your job is, every place you go can be better for you having been there.
That's right.
Amen? And so you're going to have to pardon me. I got some water this morning. My throat this morning, I got up, it felt like I was gargling glass and gravel. And so I assure you I wasn't. But anyhow, it's just been so transformative. And so I want you to, we're going to talk about a lot of passages of Scripture this morning, but you don't have to turn with me in all of them. But I would encourage you to take some notes this morning, because one of the things that we need to understand is that God did not call us to live by the golden rule. Right. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That's how he called them to live in the Old Testament.
So good.
It started in Leviticus, I think it's Leviticus 19, where the law was that you're supposed to treat your neighbor as yourself, and even the alien. And then it's who was your neighbor? Well, the other Israelites were your neighbor. And so, but in the kingdom of God, in this new covenant era, we're not to just treat people the way we want to be treated. We're to treat people and love people the way Jesus loved us.
Yes. So good. Yes.
Not just to treat people the way you want to be treated,
Right.
but to treat them the way he treated you.
Yes. So good.
Because he loved us and he loved his disciples beyond their flaws and faults. Amen?
Yes.
And so look with me in John chapter 13, and we'll start there this morning. And, but as you're turning there, think about this. When Nicodemus, the Pharisee, came to Jesus and Jesus began to talk to him, he started talking to him, and he wasn't even answering the question Nicodemus posed to him. But he culminated his conversation with Nicodemus in this: for God so loved the world. And Nicodemus was like, what? I wasn't even talking about that. For God so loved the world. He so loved the world. He so agaped the world. He so agaped his cosmos, his creation, that he sent his only son, his only begotten son, his only son created and begotten in the way he was, to perish, to purchase it back into right standing with God. Not to condemn the world. And so he begins to talk to Nicodemus, the Pharisee, about love. And our idea in the Western modern world is a lot different on love than scriptural love, I think, and what Jesus was talking about a lot of times. Love, in the biblical context of agape or agapao, is the Greek terms. It's really about always wanting the best for others, always placing others first, honoring others. The currency of the kingdom of God is honor and love.
Yes.
What do I mean by that? What does currency do? It purchases something and it advances something, right? Well, the way we advance the kingdom of God and help bring others into it is through the currency of love and honor. But it's not sexual love, it's not erotic love, it's not brotherly love even. It's agape love. It's the love that goes beyond all of those things and brings people face to face with the God kind of love showing up in a man. The God kind of love walking in shoe leather today in March 2023.
Yes. Yes.
Because there are people that it's not just good enough for you to tell them Jesus loves you, God loves you, but it's different when you show up walking in shoe leather as a person walking in the kingdom of God with the Spirit of God manifesting the divine nature of God, and you look in somebody's eyes and you say, not only does Jesus love you, not only does God love you, but I love you, flaws and all. Can you feel what I'm saying? Yes. See, there are people sitting here today, you may think, how can God love me? What about, you don't know what I've done. I don't care what you've done. Because your sin doesn't trump his love. Amen? And so Jesus makes a profound statement here. Now you got to frame this up properly. He had just washed the disciples' feet after having a meal, and knowing Judas was going to sell him down the river. And he just washes Judas' feet. And he also knows Peter, the loudmouth, impetuous Peter, was going to deny him not once, not twice, but 3 times. And Jesus had just washed his feet.
Come on.
This is beyond treating others the way you would like to be treated.
Yes. Amen.
What made the story of the Good Samaritan scandalous was the priest walked by,
Yes.
the Levite walked by, but the Samaritan did not walk by.
Come on.
And the Samaritan had no obligation under the law because they weren't law keepers. Yet he expended his money and his love on somebody he didn't even know that was robbed along the way. What made Jesus' love scandalous when the woman was caught in adultery and they had, by the law, the ability to stone her, his love was outrageous and scandalous because he said, well, whichever one of you is without sin, go ahead and throw the first stone. And he goes down and starts scribbling on the ground and looks up, and pretty soon they're all gone.
Yeah.
And the woman's like standing there embarrassed. He didn't ask her to explain. He didn't say, you dirty, rotten scoundrel. What are you thinking you're doing? You scallywag or anything like that. She's like, he says, where's your accusers? And she said, they're all gone. He said, well, I'm not going to accuse you either, but go on and don't do that no more.
Right.
You're living below your potential.
Right.
You're looking for love, but you're satisfying it or trying to with sex.
So brilliant. Yes.
And sex can never satisfy this kind of love.
No.
Yeah, it's true.
Come on, Terrence.
Amen?
So good.
Do you see what I'm saying? And so Jesus has just washed their feet, knowing that these guys some of them were going to fall very short, and that he was going to the cross. And he says here, let me see. Let me back up just a smidge on. I'm going to go to verse 31. It says, he had gone out, and Jesus said, now the Son of Man now is the Son of Man going to be glorified, and God is glorified in him. And if God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself. And, pardon me, I lost my page here. God will glorify him, the Son, in himself, and glorify him at once. And little children, yet a little while, and I'm with you, and you'll seek me. And just as I said to the Jews, so I now say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you. A new commandment. Now, love wasn't necessarily a new commandment, but this kind of love was a new commandment. Because this kind of love is the God kind of love. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. And by this, all will know that you are my disciples if you have love one for another. I want to read that again, but I want you to think about it like this. This kind of love one for another is beyond treating others the way you want to be treated. It's treating others the way that he treats you. Because notice this. He said, where I'm going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give you, that you love one another, not as you would normally love one another. Love one another how? Just as I have loved you. Love one another just as I have loved you. Not just forgiving one another when someone has wronged you. Remember back when he gave the Beatitudes, and then he talked about, not taking your brother to court. He talked about not fighting with your brother, not always forgiving him. This is even beyond that. I can forgive you, but not love you. He's saying this kind of love doesn't just forgive, but it goes beyond that to loving. Absolutely. Goes beyond that to agapeing. That's right. A new commandment is this, that you don't just forgive, but you love. Yeah. I give to you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you, so also are you to love one another. And by this, all people know you're my disciples, if you have love one for another. Now look with me there's another place here where he says basically the same thing. In John 15, verse 9 says, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. So he's saying, I want you to love the way I love, because I'm loving the way the Father loved me. Amen. We're talking next level love. We're talking supernatural love. Yes. Amen. He's saying, I want you to love one another the way I loved you, because the Father has loved me that way. Right. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you'll abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. It could fulfill your joy to love this way. And to love this way expresses the fullness of your joy. Now look with me in John 17. Verse 23 says, I am in them and you are in me, and they have become perfectly one, that the world may know that you sent me and love them even as you loved me. So good. So notice this. How does the world know that Jesus was sent from the Father? Through this kind of love. We always want the man of power of the hour and the miracles and signs and wonders, and I love all of that stuff. But if you don't have this kind of love, if you don't get this, if you don't yearn for it, if you don't ask for it, if you don't press in and get the grace for it, this is the anointing, this is the gifting, this is the miracle that will change the world.
Yes. I agree.
Can you hear this?
Excellent.
The world will know that you are my disciples if you have this love, this kind of love, one for another. We think we can argue out of it. We can do Facebook arguments and Twitter tweets and all these things. That's not going to do jack. You know what? Words are cheap. I love words. I like to write. I like to talk. I like to preach. I like to teach. But you know what? If I don't have love, if I don't have this kind of love, I'm not talking about tolerating people. I'm not talking about tolerating people. I'm talking about loving them in the way that Jesus loved the woman who was caught in adultery. What about the woman at the well? John 4. He wasn't even supposed to be talking. As a Jew, it was countercultural for him to, one, be talking to a woman unaccompanied. Number two, to be talking to a Samaritan woman in a Samaritan land. He was in basically what was considered an unclean country, talking to an unclean woman. And what happens? Hey, can you go get your husband? Well, I don't have any. Yeah, I guess technically you're right, but you've had several. 5, actually. And the one you're sleeping with now and shacking up with, he ain't it. Did he beat her up over it? No. Did he scandalize her? No. He showed scandalous, crazy, over the top, unreligious love. Because you know what? I'll be honest with you. There's been times I have felt like, well, you know, they knew better and they got what they deserved.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank God I haven't always gotten what I deserved.
Yeah.
It's so easy to say that when it's someone else. Or somebody does something that's just so ugly to you. Believe me, it's ugly to God too. But he sees past the ugliness. He saw past my ugliness. Did he see past anybody's ugliness here? Can you appreciate what I'm saying? And so we need to understand this kind of love, it offends the religious mind. It will cause the Pharisee to rise up in you.
Yeah, well.
It will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what was happening with the woman who was caught in adultery. The Pharisees were there like, there now, the law says, now what do you say there, Jesus? And Jesus didn't come to thwart the religious system. He came to break it. He did a good job and he came to break it and he came to fulfill it, but he also came to say, this is the new covenant that we're talking about here. Amen? And we have a very shallow application of it for everyone else, but a deep one for ourselves. And this is just so crucial that we get this down in our heart, because I'm telling you, I don't care who you are sitting here this morning or looking online. I don't care what church you go to or if you go to no church. You are created in the image and likeness of God. You can think you're terrible. You can look and paint yourself according to all the sins of the past. But I'm telling you something. You were created for more than that. You're living below your created identity. You are created in the likeness and image of God. I'm not going to threaten you with the fear of hell. I'm going to tell you that you are living below your standard and below your divine nature if you don't get into what I'm talking about here. And he's not going to ask you for your resume when you come into the kingdom. I was born down in Bradford County to some roughnecks. I didn't have a resume that I was proud of. I was a farm boy, and with a family history of alcoholism and cheating on their spouses and divorce. I wasn't a choir boy. I couldn't have spelled choir boy. Okay? But something happened. Something transformed. Something got a hook in me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't religion.
No.
It was love. Not sexual love, not even brotherly love.
Right.
The agape love, where somebody loved me in spite of myself. We skipped school one day, me and my buddy, and we went hunting, and then it was too cold, and so we decided to go to his brother's house and drink beer and play cards. And I was 15 years old, and his wife come home, and we're like, oh, crap. She's religious. We're in trouble. You know what she did? She came in, said, oh, are you guys hungry? I'll make you some sandwiches. And she began to speak love into us and to speak goodness into us and to share the love with us.
So good. Come on.
And that day marked my life. I was probably 15 years old. I know I wasn't old enough to drive. And so love will go further than our criticism. Love will go further than, you know what you should do? What you should do is yada, yada, yada. What you shouldn't do is yada, yada, yada. There may be time for those things, but initially the thing is you better send out the love of Christ to that person. Because no one knows you're doing wrong more than you do. You don't need somebody to tell you about it, usually. Usually. I mean, I was pretty dark, pretty clueless, but I knew when I did wrong before I was a believer. I'm just thankful I got saved when I was 17, before I got too far down the road. And so Jesus demonstrated this love because this kingdom has a different set of ethics, a different set of values. The kingdom of God is a heavenly value system that doesn't compute to the world. It doesn't compute to our natural mind. It goes beyond that. And the love of Christ is scandalous to the point where the religious mind will say, that can't be God. Why was Jesus eating with the tax collectors and sinners? That's terrible. Right? And you might have a spouse or a husband or your father or somebody who all he does is drink beer and smoke cigars, and you're like, get that filthy thing. That's not going to help him. No. Amen? No. And so I want you to turn me to Luke chapter 15, and we're going to take a look finally at this thing that we've traditionally called the prodigal son. But I want you to look at it a little bit differently, because it's really not about a prodigal son. It is, but it's not. It's about also a father's love, and it's also about a legalistic son. And so I want you to put yourself in the position, which one are you? Am I the father, the legalistic son, or maybe the renegade son? Okay? And so, this was a father that had a farm. He had two sons. Obviously, father's farm was very prosperous. And so they had two boys working on the farm. And so start with me in Luke 15, verse 11. And it says this. There was a man who had two sons. Everybody say two sons. Two sons. He had two sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And so he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had, and he took a journey into a far country, and he squandered his property in reckless living. Now let's think about this. Now, I have two adult sons and an adult daughter, and I have my two adult sons. They did start inheriting some things before I died, because I noticed that two sets of golf clubs went disappearing. I had some tools that went disappearing. I had some other things that start. So here is a son who has a father who has a wealthy farm, and his father, he's like, I am sick and tired of waiting for the old man to die. I want what I can have now. Think about that. I wish you were dead, but you're not.
It's true. Happens all the time.
And I don't know when you're going to die. So what I would like, he says to his father, is go ahead and just give me what's mine now. Now, I don't know how much that was, but I suspect that it was significant. And it probably took the son some time to liquidate it so that he wasn't traveling with goats and sheep and land. He was traveling with cash.
Yeah.
And so, give me what's coming to me now. I don't want to wait for you to die, Pops.
True.
And so, interestingly, the father's like, I guess you revealed your heart. He's like, all right. And he does it. Are you tracking with me?
Yep.
Now, it says, not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. Now, if it was a significant amount of money, he didn't squander that overnight. Right. Notice it says he went to a far country. He didn't just go down the road. I want to go where no one's going to bug me. I want to go where my family and friends aren't going to see me, because I'm going to go crazy for a while. I've been under the Father's thumb for long enough. I've been following the rules, and I don't like it, and now I'm going to cut loose. But I don't want to do it where I got friends and family that are saying, Junior, you should stop doing it. Don't do that. And so he's like, nah, I'm going to go far enough away where no one's going to see me, no one's going to bug me, no one's going to irritate me, no one's going to tell me shoulda, woulda, coulda. So he goes to a far country, pockets burgeoning with cash. Picture it. And he squandered his property in reckless living. When you're carrying lots of cash, you have lots of friends. When you're buying the pizza and the beer, you fill your house up pretty good. Right? But the impression I get is not just stopping at pizza and beer. As the old saying goes, it's probably wine, women, and song. Right? Okay? Yeah, you don't know that song? Listen to country music a little bit, you'll find several. So he took a journey to a far country. He didn't just go to Vestal. But a far country, and there he squandered the property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. And he went and he hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the field to feed the pigs. And he was there longing to be fed with the very pods that the pigs were eating. But no one gave him anything. So not only was it a far country, it was a unclean country with unclean animals, and he was an unclean Jewish boy going to feed those unclean animals in that unclean country, and he was so hungry that he wishes he could have eaten the pig's feed. That's bad. All right? And so he was slopping the hogs and wishing he was one of them. So he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. And when he came to himself, how many of you ever just came to yourself like, what am I doing? You had an aha moment. Well, he has an aha moment. He came to himself and he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I'm going to arise and go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and he headed home. And so can you imagine the son rehearsing his speech to the dad? Dad, I've been doing stuff that I know you'd be ashamed of. And I know I got it coming. Just let me have it now. You know, I should have listened. You taught me. You raised me well. Just make me one of the hired men here. I'll do whatever you need done. I've royally fouled up. You've probably had some of those conversations in your mind before, haven't you? Or is it just me? So he's walking home. And he's rehearsing his speech. And he knows he's got an earful coming. Because his pockets are empty. He's looking mighty lean. And he's probably been gone for months. Maybe longer. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and he came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. So picture this. Here's the old man. He's old. He's got arthritic knees. And he's carrying a bucket of feed across the farm lot. And he looks up and he sees a head bobbing coming up the path. A head bobbing. And pretty soon the chest, you can see. And then he sees the gate. And he says, Bree, come here. He says, Bree, come here. Who's that? Who's that coming? It looks like my boy, but I thought he was, I didn't know whatever happened to him. Is it him?
It is.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And so he sees the boy and he says, that's my boy. And then he starts running with his old hobbled knees, his arthritic ankles. And he runs, and the boy's like, oh, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. And he runs to the boy, and the boy's like, Dad, I'm so sorry. And the dad grabs him and pulls his head to his chest and says, I don't care about any of that right now.
Amen.
We thought you were dead.
Money don't matter.
We hadn't heard anything from you in all these months. We thought you were dead. You have been lost, but now you're found. Here you are standing right here with me. Go kill the fatted calf. Hey, go get the robe that we've got set aside for him. Get some sandals for him. Get him a ring. Put the signet ring on his hand. My boy is home.
Yes. Yep.
And pretty soon the other boy is off in the field, and he's coming back. He's all sweaty and filthy, and he hears all this racket going on. He's like, what in the world? And one of the servants says, hey, your brother's home. He's like, what? What's the party about then? Your brother's home.
Yeah.
He said, that scallywag, he's been spending Dad's money with whores and bars and just carrying on and being stupid. We thought he was dead. Why weren't we done with that joker? But the Father's love was scandalous, was over the top. He didn't make him explain anything. He didn't make him say he was sorry. He didn't want to hear his explanation. There's time for all of that later. We thought you were dead.
Yes.
Lost. But here you are. So bring quickly and put the robe on him, put the ring on his hand, the shoes on his feet, and bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate, for this is my son. He was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found. And they began to celebrate. The older son was in the field, and as he came, he drew near to the house and heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And the servant said to him, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he was received back safe again and sound. And so he was angry, and he refused to go in. And the father came out and entreated him and said, he answered his father, he said, look, these many years I've served you, and I've never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. He said to him, son, you're always with me, and all that I have is yours now. And it was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost, and now he's found. And I present to you today that the scandalous, over-the-top, obscene, crazy love of the Father has that kind of love and that kind of reception for you. You may want to recount your faults, your flaws, your shortcomings, you're missing the mark. But the Father says there's time for all of that later. You were dead, but now you're alive. You were lost, and now you're found. And I want you to get to your feet with me right now. And I want Tony and Mike and Mark and maybe Margie to come up. And you may be that person today. Just come on up here. And if you need ministry this morning, you may be thinking, I'm that guy. I'm that person. I don't know how the Father could love me. I've said I'm sorry all these times. I've done things I'm ashamed of. But I'm telling you, the scandalous, over-the-top, obscene, otherworldly love of the Father is here for you today. And so if that's you today, we're just going to take a few minutes, and I'll be glad to minister to you. You may just need to give your heart to the Lord. You may just, I don't know, maybe you don't have anything. Maybe you don't have any need. Maybe you just need somebody standing in front of you and saying, the Father's love is here for you. This is the gift. This is the miracle that will change the world. I love the signs and the wonders. I love tongues and interpretation and prophecy and all that good stuff. I'm all about it. But this kind of love, this is the kingdom.